Hello, welcome to Get Your Mind On. I'm Lori Stohs. When I grow up, I want to be a fireman. When I grow up, I want to be a nurse. When I grow up, I want to be a teacher. When I grow up, I want to be an artist. Think about when you were younger and what you wanted to be when you grew up. They always had us draw those pictures of what we wanted to become. How many of you drew the picture that said, when I grow up, I want to be a manager? Well, not too many people have raised their hand when I've asked that one. Usually there's lots of chuckles in the audience when we think about, I want to become a manager. But when we think about managers and the importance of that role, it's amazing to think about how many of us have that role, but how many of us think about how we go about it. So as we embark on our strengths journey over the past few weeks and as we continue on that path, I really want you to think about how many of you are in that role as a manager and what does that mean when you use your strengths? Now, when we look at the role as a manager, it's really interesting of how many people, I've been to numbers of sales meetings and salespeople come up and said, hey, what does it take to be a manager? I want to be a manager. Well, of course, they know I'm on the recruiting end for their company. So, of course, they figure if they can get the inside line, then it'll happen faster. But really, I ask them, why do you want to be a manager? When you think about why you want to be a manager, managing people is a very difficult task. I compare it to parenting. We have to really think about the development of people and making people better than they ever thought they would be and guiding them and leading them and directing them. So when you think about that responsibility, it's a pretty big responsibility. And when you think about, gosh, I didn't want to be this, but how did I become this? Well, how you became a manager many times is really when you think about companies and the way organization structures are designed, is that many times if you want more responsibility, a better title, and to make more money, guess what? That comes with management. Well, that's not always a good thing because really there's not a lot of individuals who have the management talent that we need. And many times we know we take the best salesperson and we promote them to the best manager. Or we take the best technical person and promote them to the best manager, which really is not the right thing to do. Now, more and more companies, I give kudos to many companies out there who've recognized that this isn't the right path because a management talent is very different than that individual talent to have a technical expertise or to have the expertise in that sales area or whatever it might be. So I want you to step back and think about management. And if you're in a management role, what are your responsibilities and how can you lead from that? Because some of you did take that because of the title and the responsibility and the money, because that's the path. Now, again, I'm working with organizations to kind of think about that differently in terms of an individual contributor path and a management path, allowing people to have great opportunities in both paths because we don't all have to become managers. Really, if you step back and look at it in our society today, we have a lot of disengagement. You've heard me say this more than once. We spend 75% of our life at work, and only a third of our population is fully engaged at work, which is very, very sad. But you know what? We can move that number higher if we had right managers in place, because great managers knock barriers out of people's way. They help people grow. They help people feel valued, and that's not happening as much as we'd like it to today. So really, when you think about that and you think about the impact of management, it is critical. The other thing is many times we have poor managers and thinking about, what does that really mean? Well, it means that disengagement. It means lost money to the organization. And it means many times when we as leaders who have those managers in place and we're not making the decisions, the right decisions of maybe moving that manager into a different role, we're really affecting lots of lives. We're affecting many, many lives. Because people are being maybe mismanaged or not managed because that manager isn't a right fit for the role. So let's get back on track to this strengths piece of management. So think about yourself again, if you're a manager. Think about who you are and how you manage. Again, we're not going to say you drew that picture of when I grew up, I wanted to be a manager. But you're in that role and you have a lot of responsibility. First, I want you to step back and think how much time in your role are you spent managing people versus managing or doing the work. Right? As we move to that management role, a lot of us, because we're comfortable with the work, we have a tendency not to do the management part if we're not comfortable. So first, I want you to think about that, how much time you're spending there, because if you're a manager and have a role and responsibility of being a manager, you have to compare that with the people piece of how much time you're spending with your people, especially if you're a people manager. Now, there are process managers, but I'm talking about if you manage people. So I want you to think about that. I want you to step back and think about what are your strengths? What are your strengths as an individual? You may be an individual who doesn't have a lot of relationship talent, but you are the one who gets it done. And that's harder sometimes to manage people because you have high responsibility, therefore you may have challenges delegating. Okay, that's a little bit of a challenge when you think about if you have a team of people and you like to get everything done, that delegation piece. So you have to think about how can you build trust? How can you build trust with individuals so you can delegate? Now, you know, you have the responsibility of managing the team, so hopefully you have the authority to hire and fire the team that you have. So if you're not able to do that today, I'd step back and look to see who you have on your team, because if you're not delegating, there's probably a reason for that. First, look at yourself. Second, look at your team. Some of you have high relationship talent, sometimes so much relationship talent, your people feel great. They love you because you're there, you make them happy, you bring smiles in their day, you lift them up every day when you walk in and ask them how they're doing, you give them a pat on the back. But sometimes we have challenges with feedback. Because we do like the people so well, we have a hard time giving them tough news. So there's pros and cons to each side of us when we're managers. Some of you may be great thinkers and have the best ideas, but may not have the execution in place. For positive charge this week, I want you to think about first, who are you as a manager? What are your strengths and what do you do well? And maybe what are you challenged with? And second, I want you to dig deep and think about, why are you a manager? Think deep to understand, why do you manage? What is it about for you? Is it about developing and growing people, or is it more about the title and the role? Management is a very big responsibility today. We think about our people and helping them grow, be valued, and be, just who they are. So I want you to really dig deep and think about, how can I be the best manager I can be? And should I be in a management role? Now, there might be some of you watching this that said, gosh, can you send this to my manager? Because I'm not a manager, but I sure have somebody I manage that's not a good manager. And many times we feel that. But I want you to then think about, what can you do? Because we do also self-manage ourselves in addition to working with our manager. So just being open and giving them feedback about who you are and what you need makes a great partnership with an employee and a manager. So thank you for joining us today, and remember to get your mind on.